3 chilling wilderness horror stories that will haunt you. The wilderness. It's a place of peace, of tranquility, of beauty. But it can also be a place of terror. A place where the unknown lurks just beyond the tree line, and the darkness holds secrets best left undisturbed. Here are 3 chilling true stories of deep woods and wilderness horror that various individuals have shared over the years. These tales are often recounted as personal experiences or encounters, and while their veracity can't always be confirmed, they continue to unsettle those who hear them. So, gather round, turn down the lights, and prepare to be drawn into the unsettling depths of the wilderness. Our first story takes us deep into the lush, ancient forests of the Pacific Northwest, where towering trees cast long shadows and the air hums with the secrets of the wild. It's here, in the heart of this emerald labyrinth, that a lone hiker named Mark embarked on what he thought would be a routine backpacking trip. Mark was an experienced outdoorsman, comfortable with the solitude and challenges of the wilderness. He set off on the well-marked trail, his backpack laden with supplies, his senses attuned to the symphony of the forest. The first day unfolded as expected, the familiar rhythm of his boots on the trail a comforting constant. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows through the trees, Mark located a suitable clearing to set up camp for the night. He ate his dinner, the silence broken only by the crackling of the campfire and the distant hoot of an owl. Hours passed, the fire dwindled. Mark retreated to his tent, the nylon walls a thin barrier between him and the vast, dark wilderness beyond. He drifted off to sleep, the events of the day fading into the background, replaced by dreams of home and the comfort of civilization. But in the dead of night, a sound, faint and unsettling, pierced through his sleep, and pulled him abruptly back to consciousness. It was a scratching sound, like claws on bark, coming from just outside his tent. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. He lay perfectly still, listening intently, but the sound didn't return. Convincing himself it was just an animal, he eventually drifted back to sleep. But the next morning as he emerged from his tent, he was met with a sight that sent a chill down his spine. The once familiar trail, clearly marked the day before, was gone. In its place was an untamed wilderness, the path completely swallowed by the dense undergrowth. Panic welled up inside him. He was lost. Disoriented and increasingly afraid, Mark tried retracing his steps, desperately searching for any sign of the familiar path. But the forest seemed to mock his efforts, the dense foliage closing in around him, the once welcoming woods now a menacing labyrinth. He hiked for hours, the sun a cruel reminder of time slipping away. As dusk approached, he stumbled upon a small, stagnant pond, its surface choked with algae. And that's when he heard it again. That same scratching sound from the night before, closer this time, more insistent. He whirled around, frantically searching for the source of the noise, his eyes darting from tree to tree, his breath catching in his throat. But there was nothing there. Nothing he could see, at least. As darkness descended, the forest came alive with unseen eyes, the rustling of leaves and the snapping of twigs amplifying his fear tenfold. He spent another night consumed by terror, the scratching sound haunting his fitful sleep. When dawn broke, he knew he had to find a way out of this nightmare. He pushed through the undergrowth, his clothes torn, his body weary. Just when he thought he couldn't go on any longer, he stumbled out of the dense undergrowth and into a clearing. Our next story takes us to the vast, ancient Appalachian Mountains, a place steeped in folklore and shrouded in an almost mythical aura. It's here, nestled amongst the towering peaks and whispering pines, that a group of friends encountered a chilling mystery that would forever change their perception of the remote wilderness. The friends, Sarah, Emily, Ben, and Chris, had rented a secluded cabin for a weekend getaway. They were drawn to the cabin's rustic charm, its isolation promising a peaceful escape from the demands of their city lives. The drive to the cabin was long, the sun sinking lower in the sky with each passing mile. By the time they arrived, darkness had enveloped the mountains, casting long, eerie shadows across the winding dirt road. The friends unloaded their bags, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the evening. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of pine and something faintly musty, like a forgotten memory. A fire crackled merrily in the stone fireplace, casting a warm glow on the worn furniture and the mounted deer head above the mantelpiece, its glass eyes seeming to follow their every move. They unpacked their bags, settling into the cozy space, the weight of their city lives slowly melting away as they embraced the tranquility of their surroundings. The first night passed without incident. They shared stories, played cards, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of each other's company, but as the days turned into nights, a subtle unease began to creep into their idyllic retreat. It started with small, unexplainable occurrences. Objects moved slightly, as if nudged by an unseen hand. Whispers seemed to emanate from the empty rooms upstairs, faint and fleeting, like the rustling of leaves just outside the windows. One evening, while preparing dinner, Sarah swore she saw a figure dart past the kitchen doorway, a fleeting glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye. She dismissed it as a trick of the light, but the encounter left her shaken. As the strange events continued, their initial amusement gave way to genuine concern. They tried to rationalize the occurrences, blaming them on the creaky old house or their overactive imaginations, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, a growing sense that something wasn't quite right in the secluded cabin. One particularly stormy night, as the wind howled outside and rain lashed against the windows, the friends huddled together in the living room, their earlier laughter replaced by a tense silence. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into darkness. A collective gasp escaped their lips as they fumbled for their phones, their beams of light cutting through the oppressive darkness. That's when they heard it. A low growl, guttural and menacing, coming from the direction of the front door. They froze, their hearts pounding in their chests, their eyes wide with fear. The growl grew louder, closer, as if whatever lurked outside was now pressing against the thin wooden door, testing its strength. Terror gripped them, paralyzing them in place. They huddled together, their breaths shallow and rapid, the sound of their own heartbeats deafening in the darkness. Then, as quickly as it started, the growling stopped. Silence descended upon the cabin once more, heavy and suffocating. They sat in the darkness for what seemed like an eternity, too afraid to move, too terrified to speak. Finally, Ben, his voice trembling, suggested they make a run for it. They agreed, their fear outweighing their logic. Grabbing whatever they could find to use as weapons, a fireplace poker, a heavy bookend, they slowly made their way to the front door, their every sense on high alert. Ben cautiously reached for the doorknob, his hand shaking. Chapter 3. Our final story takes us to the rugged, unforgiving wilderness of the Rocky Mountains, a place where nature reigns supreme and man is merely a visitor. It's here that a seasoned hunter named Jake encountered something that defied explanation. Jake was a solitary man, comfortable in the company of only himself and the wild creatures he hunted. He knew the mountains like the back of his hand, every twist and turn. He'd been coming to this spot for years, drawn to its isolation and the abundance of elk. He arrived at his usual campsite as the sun began its descent. He set up camp with practiced ease. As darkness fell, he built a fire, the flames casting a flickering light on the surrounding trees. He ate his dinner, the silence broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl. He sat by the fire for hours, lost in his thoughts, the vastness of the star-studded sky above him, a humbling reminder of his own insignificance. As the fire died down to embers, he retired to his tent, but just as he was drifting off, a sound pierced the night, a sound unlike anything he'd ever heard before. It was a howl, but not like any howl he'd ever encountered. It was deep, guttural, and filled with a primal rage that sent shivers down his spine. It echoed through the valley, bouncing off the surrounding peaks. Jake lay frozen in his sleeping bag, his heart pounding in his chest. He'd heard his fair share of animal calls in his years of hunting, but this was different. This was something else entirely. The howling continued for what felt like an eternity, then slowly faded into the night, leaving behind an eerie silence. Jake lay awake for hours, his senses on high alert, his mind replaying the chilling howl. But deep down, he knew it was something more, something ancient and primal. When dawn finally broke, he cautiously emerged from his tent, his rifle at the ready. He scanned the surrounding woods, searching for any sign of what might have made that terrifying sound. And that's when he saw them. Footprints. Massive footprints, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. They were easily twice the size of a man's foot, with deep impressions and what appeared to be claw marks. They led from the tree line to the edge of his campsite, as if whatever had made that chilling howl had been watching him. A cold dread washed over him as he followed the tracks, his heart pounding in his chest. The tracks led deeper into the woods, disappearing into the dense undergrowth. Jake hesitated for a moment, torn between his curiosity and his growing fear. He knew he should turn back, that whatever had made those tracks and that unearthly howl was something he didn't want to encounter. But something drew him forward, a morbid curiosity he couldn't shake. He pushed through the undergrowth, following the tracks deeper and deeper into the heart of the wilderness. The forest grew darker, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. The tracks led him to a small clearing, the trees surrounding it twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. And there, in the center of the clearing, he saw it. There you have it, 3 chilling tales from the depths of the wilderness, each one a haunting reminder that there are things in this world that defy explanation. These stories tap into the primal fear of the unknown that lurks in the wilderness. Whether they're true or not, they serve as a reminder of how small and vulnerable we can feel in the face of nature's mysteries. So the next time you find yourself venturing into the great outdoors, remember these tales. Remember that the wilderness holds secrets, some best left undisturbed, ###.